All right, start recording in three, two, and one. All right, and welcome back to the Reserve Squad Midweek Show, soccer podcast covering all things in the EPL from a bench perspective. I'm your spin, and since we last left off, Liverpool had just beaten Southampton. They had a 15-point lead in the table. They were leading PSG by a goal going back to Anfield. They were leading that tie, and well, since it has been a couple of weeks, the vibes for Liverpool have changed. They aren't nearly as rosy, so we'll get to that. We're going to try to cover what all has happened there. I'm going to try to focus. I'm mostly going to focus on the Bulls story, but a couple other stories have emerged as well. We'll run down what happened in the top 10. We'll talk a little bit about the Caribou final as well as Newcastle went on to win their first trophy in a very long time. Eddie Howe gets his first trophy. I think it's actually the first England manager to win a trophy for a very long time, if not maybe the first time, or at least in the modern day. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. It's going to be a pretty packed show, but first I do have to get to what happened with U.S. soccer. I have covered U.S. soccer for pretty extensively, or I guess detailed, over ever since I've been doing this. So it makes sense to talk about this. So we get fourth in the Nations League, and this is basically a competition that we have won since its inception. So what happened here? There Pochettino comes in where there are all these really good vibes. I remember they I did a podcast after they beat Jamaica 4-2, and it was even I think it was more dominant than the actual scoreline. We just looked incredibly good, and all of a sudden we've hit a blip. So what has happened here? So we're gonna the first little bit of the show is going to focus a little bit on that. So I think the probably the worst part about it is the real story for both games is we deserved it. We offered really zero threat both games, which isn't great. Very lackluster. Little intensity is a note I had. We need a goal in both games in the 88th minute, and we're just kind of passing it side to side. We're holding on to the ball. So we'll get started with Panama. We lose 1-0. Panama get one shot on target the whole game, and it beats Turner. Matt Turner is facing a lot of criticism, and rightly so. I don't think he should get beat from the angle he is. He hasn't played a whole lot of football in the last for club in the last maybe 2 or 3 years. To be honest, and he looks rusty. He didn't have his best performance versus Canada either. Just the positioning's a little bit off, and I don't think he should get beat from where he does. Now it's a well placed shot, to be fair, but it's not just him. Scally is a bit out of position here. Tim Ream decides to run away from the attacker. I think he's worried about maybe someone making a run behind that just doesn't exist. So just everyone kind of panicked here, but we deserved it. You don't really offer a threat for most of the game, and you allow a team that's sitting back to get forward just one or two times, and they put it away. It was they played a back five with four in front of that. We struggled to create chances. Now, Josh Sargent did get the start and actually put the ball in the net. It's offsides, but it's a pretty decent finish. But other than that, we couldn't get Sargent the ball really. So I don't know how much this was on him. That said, in the second half, Pochettino made a change. Patrick Abangayang came on. This 24-year-old on Charlotte, scored during the January games, the January camp, and I'll get to that later. I think that's actually doing more harm than good, but that'll be a theme I get to a little bit later on. But this guy got some minutes in January, scored, impressed. So I guess Pochettino was he Pochettino, I guess, he gained some trust with him. We've got a lot of injuries at the striker spot at the minute. That's another kind of theme that I'll be getting to a little bit later. No Balogun, no Haji Wright, no Pepe, Ricardo Pepe, and so here's a guy to get a shot. To see what he's got, and he came on. And he had two big chances to maybe put a stamp on maybe his place in not necessarily the team, going forward as far as next summer, but maybe for the Gold Cup. and instead he got into two really good chances, and it felt like the stage was a little bit too big for him. One, he's completely in on goal, and he almost mishits the shot, trying to go for the corner, and just it's way too weak and right to the goalie. And then there's another chance in the second half where he gets on the end of kind of a first time finish, and he hits it wide and too high. Now again, you can't just blame it all on the kid just coming in off the bench. But that said, this isn't a time to be too nice and too easy on players, because if this was a World Cup game, it would be the same kind of situation. So I do think there's gives and takes a little bit on how harsh to judge. I think it's less on really him. This kid. I'm not necessarily saying that he got his shot and maybe we shouldn't see him again. I don't want to necessarily go that far, but you know, you get into these situations. If you're going to be an international player, you need to put him away, and they didn't. But that said, you need to create more than this versus Panama. That's just sitting deep. And Panama has actually become a little bit of our bogey team, as they knocked us out in the Copa America just a year ago as well. But it wasn't just that. So that wasn't good. I think I think it can't be overstated how much we're missing our starting fullbacks on both sides. So Gino Dest is probably a name that people will probably have forgotten about how good he was in Qatar. Now he can be a little too adventurous, for people's liking when he goes forward. He basically is an extra attacker when he goes forward, though. With rather his runs, he's got very good vision. He's maybe not the best, defensively, but he's an extra number in the attack. And when you're playing it, when a team is sitting back, I'm becoming almost radicalized in my view that the way to beat a back five, or basically a back nine, and it's this kind of case, you're playing everyone behind the ball. Your fullbacks need to basically become the extra men, and not just the extra men just out wide, just the puzzle solvers in some cases. And Dest offers that on one side, and Anthony Robinson, in my opinion, offers it on the other. He's also another player. Maybe he's a little bit more limited, and he's just kind of a bit of a runner. He's gets crosses things in. Dest can do a little bit more kind of creative kind of things. But we missed both. We went into this game versus Panama playing almost like Yunus Musa as the almost like a makeshift kind of right back, and then we played Joe Scally on the other end. Scally's not really going to be one to get forward, so you're misusing a little bit on both ends. The other thing too is Gio Reyna didn't get minutes in this game, and rather than that, that's starting to be a theme a little bit here now. For club and country, we haven't seen him for a very long time. I think they even said maybe it wasn't until Copa a year ago. And as you're watching this game, we're struggling to thread balls in. We're struggling to have people to try to want the ball. So that wasn't. I didn't really understand that either. There was a player that a lot of people online, a lot of U.S. fans online wanted to see that they didn't get a chance to see was Diego Luna, and we actually saw him versus Canada. So the Panama game, I'm in a weird situation where it's the first game in a while. First game out of the international break. We haven't played in a while. You had that January camp that a lot of these players based in Europe didn't work a part of. So you can allow maybe a one-off game. That is what it is. The Canada game, I think, is the issue. At least for me, mostly because it's back to back, so back to back performances that were really poor. Uh, Panama was playing a certain style and frustrated us, and we're missing a core of our best kind of attacking best attackers, and also best kind of creative players. So I can maybe make an excuse a little bit for there. Canada played entirely different, and at least our performance wise wasn't much better. So this isn't good. We lose 2-1. First, we score a really good goal. It's Tim Weah kind of being a little bit of the creator on the left side, and he's able to thread in a ball to Diego Luna. Diego Luna gets a start. He makes a pretty good run through the middle, and then gets into the box and then has the head up and he's able to square it to Patrick Mayang. It's basically a setter, but hey, you're in the right spot and you scored it. So there you go. But then just our back line can't really clear a ball when we're kind of watching everything a little bit like statues. The rebound basically falls to a Canada player, puts it away. 4-1-1. Uh, and that's what it is at halftime. A couple guys got a start that you probably wouldn't have expected. Where it's the second game we've also seen Christian Pulisic come to play a little bit more like the number 10 instead of being a little bit more on the left. Tim Weah, though, is playing really well on that left side, so I don't really know if you necessarily want to get rid of that. And when we played Jamaica, I think we saw something similar where Weah was mostly on the left side, and Pulisic was a little bit more not necessarily as like a number 10 as far as like a central attacker, but almost like a second striker underneath someone. And I think the problem here is, we didn't have Pepe, so that relationship didn't necessarily work. And we just struggled to find Pulisic the ball in a way that to me is probably the biggest kind of worrying sign, at least. You want Pulisic to get the ball on the run, to take players on. If nothing else, you want him to get touches into the box. We weren't able to do that. And with Canada, it was entirely different because Canada weren't necessarily just sitting off. They were pressing, and our back line was not able to handle that. We weren't really able to find the right passes together. So we get to the second half, and it gets really bad. Canada finds Jonathan David just getting fully behind our back line. We're trying to attack, and then it's just kind of a long ball that just surprises everyone. And this left back, Arfsten, slips. And basically, we get lucky here because David basically slips as well. Uh, this left back was not ready. So I mentioned Scally played left back, and it wasn't. I thought that kind of handcuffed up a little bit. Versus Panama, we have a new player, to come in. Uh, and he didn't offer a whole lot either going forward or defensively. And then a few minutes. Actually, this is a interesting kind of moment because Jesse Marsh is so incensed that he was positive it was a PK that he actually gets sent off. But it doesn't really matter because a few minutes after that, Jonathan David still gets a last laugh. And again, he gets the ball into the box and he does very well to create a little separation here. That said, I think it's Miles. I think it's McKenzie who who is worried about. I think it's someone named. I think it's someone Tajon Buchanan makes a clever little run that just does enough to put little doubt into McKenzie's head. Where if McKenzie goes to David and if Buchanan is on side, the slip pass is on for David or for Buchanan to get the ball into the box. And McKenzie is kind of caught into two minds here. And I think I think he's just kind of distracted a little bit by that little run. And that allows David to go past him. And then David does really well to just uh, get the ball into his left foot and he basically curls it into the net. Now, here's the issue though. At first watch, I thought it was a fantastic goal, fantastic finish by David. On the replay, Matt Turner is way too far on one side of the goal, and he's not able to dive to stop a ball that does curl, but basically curls into the middle of the net. It's not hit into the corner. So I think it's strike two basically on Turner, just just being a little off. Like you can't blame him for the first goal here. I do think you can go at him a little bit, and more than that, as Canada is pressing us in the second half, as we are struggling to kind of maintain control a little bit more, we can't pass from the back, and that's always been Turner's kind of fault. We've always been able to explain that away with Turner being just very good at being a shot stopper. Now the shot stopping is stopped. Will Turner be able to discover that with maybe if he can get maybe a move and he can get some game time and then we'll see where we are in a year possibly. Turner does pretty well to actually uh, does well to bounce back when people do count him out. He wasn't the reason why we were knocked out of the Copa. In fact, I think in that Panama game he was injured, and that we had to play with our backup keeper, and the backup keeper basically let in a goal I don't think he should have. So I do think there's still reasons to still believe in Turner, but it is starting to be just like in 2022. Matt Turner was a little bit of a question mark going into that game as well. So it's not great. Goalkeeper kind of question marks. We have question marks on how do we get the best out of Pulisic? How do we get the best out of Gia Reyna? I think that's another thing too. He's another game where he doesn't start, and when when you're down a goal and you have to actually go chase the game, then he makes an appearance. And to me, he was the only player not shying from the ball. And he was looking to play people in behind. He had a nice little combination play with Diego Luna. In the second half on the touchline, at least two players that at least were trying to demand the ball. And we did create a few chances late. But our problem is it fell to guys you probably wouldn't want them to fall to. Diego Luna makes a great run into the box. This is this is down the stretch. So this is in the 85th minute or so, or at least all these chances come in the 85th minute. Diego Luna makes a great run into the box, charges at the keeper running at him, and his touch goes over the bar. I think it comes from a free kick that Giorena has a great ball in. Someone tries to the square ball across the goal. You maybe can go a little bit at Luna for not selling out a little bit more. If he sells out, and he can probably get fouled, he tries to do he tries to get the first touch and just hits it over. This is probably the one that you can maybe excuse because he is putting some effort to get there, and it's a misplaced touch. The other ones I do think are a situation of guys that maybe you put a different guy in these situations, it's probably a better outcome. So we have a corner kick, and this guy White comes on, and another striker that had some success in the January camp. I think he plays for Montreal, and he can't control his first touch. His first touch goes off his knee and or off his like thigh, and it goes too far ahead of him. If it's cushioned, he can probably get a strike on it before a defender can do anything about it. But it goes a little bit too far out, and he has to stretch out, and it's minimal. So I don't want to be too harsh, but again, this is a situation where if it's cushioned, he can get a shot off. Instead the defender is able to react, so stops that. And then there's another moment where Diego Luna gets a ball into the box. He opts to cross something in instead of going for goal. That's blocked. But then the return ball comes to him. He passes it to Arnston, who is behind him, and it's not. I don't think this chance is much dissimilar to the David goal. He just, his curl just misses wide. He's not able to find the corner. But Arston didn't do enough to me to make me want to see him again. There's a player named Lund that we've seen in the past. You could maybe even someone like a Scally wouldn't be the worst to actually see him played at the at left back in instead. So we had some issues. We One of the changes that actually Poch made was he took Scally off right at the start of second half to bring in a player named Fozzie, and we've seen Fozzie. We saw Fozzie play in one of those. I think it was the September camp. So and he was. I don't necessarily know if he necessarily did enough to warrant a start or warrant more conversation either, but at least he was trying to go forward. He was an attack minded. He just wasn't able to actually beat the his fullback. Unfortunately, I think it's Alistair Johnson who kind of covered him up. So I think the talking point for me is we created three chances late, and you'd think, okay, we at least showed a little bit fight towards the end. It just didn't go our way. But to me, I think that's misleading. I think the pace of the game, for the most part, was really slow given the stakes. Now, it is just a third place game. What were the stakes really? Uh, if to me, I just wanted to see an improvement from the first game, and to me, I just felt like we were in quicksand. I thought until Giorena came in, I thought people were shying from the ball. It's another game where Tyler Adams comes back into the side. Now Tyler Adams has been fantastic for Bournemouth, uh, but for some reason he comes into the side. We saw this with the Gold Cup too. We don't see Weston McKennie all of a sudden get the best out of his game. We don't see Musa being able to get the best out of his game. We're not able to get Pulisic the ball. So you're playing it's Tyler Adams and Tasman for one of these. It's Tyler Adams and McKennie as the pivot for another, and just there's been a lot of talk that maybe we can do without Giorena. But, he's never available anyways, so why don't we try to get away from him? you get another kind of you get more evidence to the contrary that Giorena needs to feature if he's fit, no matter what. Just he knows what to do with the ball. So uh, to talk about the poach changes, so we weren't doing anything with the fullback. So again, Fozzie comes on. He's trying to get a little bit more forward, trying to get a little bit more kind of overlaps to get an additional number ahead. And he just couldn't beat Alistair Johnson. And I think the bigger problem to me is we didn't try to ever overload Johnson with a 2v1 or 2v2s. The player who's playing on that side, whether it was Diego Luna or it was Pulisic at one point, they were mostly just playing centrally. They were trying to get the ball in the half spaces. So that's kind of the issue with Luna, and I'll get to that a little bit later on, is I don't really know how to play him in a sense of, does he really have a position, or is he a number kind of number 10, like, because he is small of stature. Now, one thing you can say about him is he wasn't shying from the ball. He was trying to demand it. He was making good runs into the box, and he was making things happen. But you get into a situation of, I think he looks like he's 5'5". Can he be bullied? I do think you could possibly argue that. Now that said, him and Reina had some pretty good chemistry when they were playing together. Tessman came on, and unfortunately for him, I think he probably had the most maybe to lose from these two games, because Tanner Tessman has been, I think he's playing now in France, and he's maybe even Lyon, and he was one of the more kind of, I think I talked about him in that Jamaica game when he played, but for some reason I don't know if it was playing with Tyler Adams and they're too similar, or when he was playing with McKennie, when he came on, he was one of the ones that was shying from the ball, and so it wasn't great. And then the Achamayang comes off, White comes on, so Sargent doesn't even get a start. So I don't know what to think about that. And then Pulisic was taken off early when we need a goal. Maybe he had a minutes restriction. He wasn't playing great. But if you get him a chance into the box, you get him in that moment where Luna was in towards the end. I think at a minimum, Pulisic tries to go for goal. Luna tried to basically square it to a teammate. I'm kind of grabbing at straws a little bit. So that's where we are. This wasn't good. And I think it's a different style of a game than we saw from Panama. So that's the reason why I'm a little bit more kind of red alarm a little bit here. Uh, we failed in a different way. We weren't playing a team that was sitting, in a low block the whole game. We were playing a team that was high pressing us. They were playing a relatively high back line, and we couldn't get guys behind it. And we couldn't really advance the ball past midfield most of the time either. We had lots of possession, but it was mostly safe. They were kind of dictating us to go sideways and backwards. So, and I thought the second half we didn't do well with Canada's pressure at all. Turner, none in the back line. Carter Vickers was poor again. McKenzie has a bit of a mistake. He plays well in one game, and then he turns around and has another kind of what are you doing kind of game. So, and it was. I think it was good that we didn't see Tim Ream at least. Tim Ream gets a start versus Panama. Uh, I don't want to be in a situation where we have to play Tim Ream because he's the only one we can trust on the ball. Because at 39 years old, regardless of who you pair him with, whether it's Chris Richards or someone else, you do that in a World Cup. I don't know how sustainable that is. We will not be able to play a certain style. We'll actually have to be the team, sitting back and having to counter. And if you are a team that has to counter, some of these guys aren't really going to work as far as ball to feet kind of attackers. So we'll get to that a little bit later on. But I just think this is worrying. You know, I had a different take after that Jamaica game because just we looked. It wasn't just like we scored 4 goals. Just the style of the way we moved the ball, the way just everything about that felt different. That gave us something to believe in. That type of play wasn't here. It wasn't to be found. So there was no Pepe here. There was no Anthony Robinson. I can get that. Uh, but just it's hard to believe this was how they set up it and how they wanted to play. It felt like they were going through the motions. Injuries, yes, absolutely factored in, but I think 3 shots total versus Panama versus a team that was just sitting in a box all game, and we just couldn't create a chance. Gio being sat out for fitness reasons, and we've heard that excuse before with a different coach. So, maybe it is legit. I don't know, but this is troubling. But what happened from that November camp to basically this kind of window? There was that January camp, and what happened during that? Uh, we basically played 2 random friendlies in a period where all the European-based players, stayed with their clubs. It was an MLS-focused camp, and it's not the first time we've done this. This kind of been this can be a little bit of a theme for a couple of the years now. I think it sabotages us. I think it dilutes the potential talent pool. I think it gives the manager a chance to basically get a rapport with players that I don't think he should be anywhere they should be anywhere near for the national team. And we've seen it's happened multiple times now where someone will perform in that little camp and they get elevated into the big games, whether or not it's Copa America or it's the World Cup or it's Gold Cup or Nations League, and we saw that here. White and White was one of those. Achemayang was another. Now maybe they were included simply because of the injury crisis, but you've got Josh Sargent, and if nothing else, you want to see him at least get you wanna see him basically fail, before you fully give up on him, and what I mean by that is he's not getting opportunities for the most part. He got the one opportunity and he put it in the net. Was it is it really a case of just his, inability to not be able to do anything? Or is it the case of us not being able to really find him? If you get him the looks that Achemayang, got in that Panama game, now he was taken off, so does Sargent do better? I think you could argue maybe he does. No, does Sargent put away the chance that Aubameyang, scored versus, Canada? I feel like, it's a question that can't really be asked, but I think, the only reason we saw this guy, get a start and all of a sudden he's getting minutes now, is because he scored and looked pretty good, in that friendly window. So, I just think I think it's a problem. I really do. I don't like the idea of us doing it because again, someone like Jack McGlynn, would be another, who was, subbed on versus Panama when someone like Gio Reyna was there. And Pochettino even said that, it wasn't necessarily a fitness issue because had that game gone to extra time, Gio Reyna would have come on for extra time. So I I'm a little bit kind of, peeved a bit about that. So we'll get to my problems here. The center backs are a giant issue. I mean, Tim Ream, thank you for your service. You're 39 years old. This isn't me hating on someone. We can celebrate you, but I don't want you to start another game. Uh, and but again, the problem is who do you play without Tim Ream? We don't have a consistent kind of center back pairing that we can look at right now. Chris Richards is probably, if he's fit, probably going to be one side. Chris Richards had some issues as well. He needs someone to kind of handhold him a little bit. I don't know if Mac McKenzie is that player to play next to Richards, or maybe it's Austin Trusty or someone else out there in the youth ranks. I don't really want it to be Walker Zimmerman either. Uh, or Miles Robinson. McKenzie, a little bit like Miles Robinson, in my opinion. Decent one game, makes a very bad horror the next. Center backs must be fixed before anything else. Uh, Also, Pochettino needs to ask himself, how are we going to play in this World Cup coming up? Are we going to sit back and just counter as opposed to playing a high defensive line? Are we not going to press? We're going to save some energy. If that's the case, maybe you could play Tim Ream. Maybe he would kind of benefit a little bit in that. That's the only way he's going to work. If you're going to sit back and soak in some pressure, your keeper is going to have to be a really good shot stopper. Matt Turner, is he going to be our guy again or not? Someone else has to step up if not, and we need to get that sorted out immediately. By the end of the Gold Cup, we need to know who the number one is going to be because we don't have many windows after this to get this sorted. So that's an issue. Gio Reyna, to me, if he's fit, he must start. He must play. You get him the ball, and he doesn't shy from it. He knows how to thread a through ball. He knows how to when someone's making a run, he knows how to get Pulisic the ball. He it's not everyone's cup of tea, but to me, it's a must. He hasn't. I haven't really seen him in the games for club in Dortmund. People that actually have followed him have said that he's had a pretty poor club season for Dortmund when he has played. But I don't care. I think you're in a situation where he's one of the best players that we have, if not the best. When you getting the ball to his feet, getting him on the turn, and asking him to problem solve, because I don't think we have enough of that right now. So that's kind of the negatives. Is there a way to kind of do a little positive spin here? We don't have Haji Wright, we don't have Balogun, we don't have Pepe. Uh, those are that's pretty serious firepower there. And you imagine they're going to be there in a year. So Dest and Robinson as well. Really good creative fullbacks, that would punish someone sitting deep, but also, fullbacks that were, that are pretty good at either, being in a counterattacking team, whether or not it's Dest on the ball that can play a ball over the top that sees Raya making a run, or if it's Robinson being able to offer an overlap run, or able to counter himself to help Pulisic out. I think Pulisic really missed Anthony Robinson. The way he owns that left side, he always combines well, whether it's Pulisic or Weah. I think we missed a lot of that. I just thought in this case, Pulisic's playing through the middle, not really able to get the ball. Weah was doing decent on the left side, but for the most part, he had no running support next to him. He gets the ball and he has to take on his fullback 1v1 and do everything by himself. So I think we missed that. I think we messed up with the relationship there. Pulisic maybe isn't really the number 10. Are you going to play even with that kind of formation or not? Pulisic, does well with the half spaces, but he's almost like a Phil Foden in some cases, where he can work, but the system needs to basically be tailored to him. Fullback overlapping, where he's got to get the ball in the right kind of areas for him to really excel. You get the ball though in the final third, he's going to be your finisher. We need to find a way to get the most out of Pulisic, and so far that hasn't necessarily been the case. Now, I keep bringing up that Jamaica game. Pulisic was amazing in that game. That's not a coincidence. Diego Luna, a note about him is he probably played his way at a minimum onto the Gold Cup roster, if not starting. We probably do need to see a little bit more of him, just see what's there. Does he have a ceiling? I do think the answer is yes. But that said, uh, there's probably a floor there as well. And if nothing else, he showed something. He probably should have gotten 15 minutes versus Panama. To be honest, Ray wasn't going to come on. Put on someone that's creative, someone that's going to do a spark. Whether or not it's being physical. He might be small, but he's not afraid to go into challenges, not afraid to challenge for loose balls, and not afraid to run at people. So I thought we had some guys that were a little bit scared of the ball, scared of making a mistake. He wasn't that, and he got a chance to do something versus Canada, made some pretty good runs into the box. So that's at least something there. Uh, Another note I have here is there's a lot of hype now that's kind of downplaying people attacking this golden generation. That's kind of been a thing I've seen. Uh, this could be a golden generation. That doesn't mean England, Spain, France, Germany, whoever, host other countries aren't having generations of better players. We might have the best generation of players that we've ever had. I think you can argue that absolutely. At least the technical talent that we have, the depth that we have in a number of their positions. We've got guys that are performing in the Champions League week in and week out. That's not always necessarily been the case. Now that said, you've got Turner that I wouldn't consider the best keeper that we've ever had. Is he part of that golden generation? How are you going to ask a lot of these outfield players to have a bit of a dud behind the net? We don't have necessarily the most reliable back line. Is that part of the golden generation? I don't necessarily know if that's the case either. But as as much as I want to, hype up, someone like a Gio Reyna, you want to hype up Pulisic, Raya, McKennie. You know, Germany have Florian Wirtz. They have Jamal Musiala. You have Joshua Kimmich. France, Elise, Dure, Mbappe is still like 20, 26 years old. Barcola, you have, Camavinga. You can just, England as well. I just think, Spain. We just saw what Spain did. Spain lose Rodri. Here comes Zubimendi able to just kind of handle England in a Euro final. Nico Williams and Yamal is only like 17 years old now, and Yamal is in a weird situation where he's 17 and he's getting praised because he's amazing at 17. If he was 20, if he was 30, he would be amazing right now. He is otherworldly unbelievable at the minute, and he just scored an unbelievable goal for Spain in this past window as well. So I think we need to have perspective when we talk about this golden generation. There's a American exceptionalism. If we have a golden generation, that means we're the best no matter what. That's not necessarily how it works. Uh, and I think the other thing I mentioned France. I looked at their U21 team, someone with a Ryan Cherki and Ugo Etikite and a whole host of others. It's possible their senior guys, their U21 team, Wilson Odobert could beat the team that we played out in the Nations League, our senior team. So we need to tamp down a little bit on that. I think for the most part, there's a lot of jealousy that's seeped in, and I think the people attacking this golden generation are former players that feel like all of a sudden they haven't been appreciated nearly as much. It's the Lawless, it's Stu Holden's, it's the players that have been in part of the soccer media that have tried to downplay this team at every chance that they get. Every time we underperform, they're the first to go at these players. Now before they were the first to defend the manager that was in charge of the players. Players do have some responsibility, but anyways, I'm ranting a little bit. Uh, 2026 expectation. I'm gonna make a case here where we're gonna play against teams that are better with the ball. We're not necessarily be playing a ton of teams that are sitting deep for the whole time. So I think we could possibly sit a little bit deep, and there will be a chance to counter. Do we have the ability to counter with our guys? With Balogun, yes. With Weah, absolutely. Uh, Now, if we are playing against a team that is sitting back, does Balogun work better than Ricardo Pepe? I don't necessarily know if that's the case, and I think the worry for me is: does Pochettino is he only in one mind, or does he have a plan B? Now, we saw in Nations League. I don't necessarily know if he has a plan B, and that could be a bit of a problem. But you get things like that through reps. We haven't had a chance to have a whole lot of reps, so we need to have like I said, a plan B, A, C, versus different game states. When you're trailing, when you're dominating, what do you do? Well, how can you find an extra man into the box? When you need control, how can you find a way to get an additional player in midfield, etc. The certain players, benefit in more cases than not. In a game where you need to win the ball back, you need to have lots of high intensity. Maybe Gio Reyna doesn't necessarily the best for that. Maybe you have a McKennie, presser instead, or even you know, I'm just throwing out scenarios. So, uh, I the expectation is kind of up for grabs a little bit here. Like I said, I keep going back to that Jamaica game. What happened there? Robertson was owning that left side. McKennie was actually offering some pretty good width and some pretty good crossing. Weston McKennie has a really good right foot on him, and we don't use that enough. We don't utilize that enough. Now, in these games, we were playing him through the middle, and he's not someone you want to get the ball and get him to turn. When he plays for Juventus, he's usually playing either as a second striker, he's playing really high up, or he's playing out wide as well. They like utilizing him to cross the ball. So I think we maybe have misused him a little bit. Pulisic, again, just nowhere to be found in the Jamaica game. He was the second striker. He was making runs behind Ricardo Pepe. Pepe played. That would be another. But we had we had 93% pass accuracy. We dominated the ball. But we created loads of looks as well. And our shape, I thought, was a little bit different as well. We almost used Anthony Robinson almost in midfield, and he was almost playing. He was almost playing. I hate the word inverted, but he almost was. He was almost playing, more kind of through the middle than necessarily out wide. It was an interesting kind of look. It was almost like a 3-3 and then like a 4 kind of shape. I've spoken about that before. We didn't see any of that in this Nations League. So uh, I'm gonna write this off. Um, we'll maybe I need to see what we do in Gold Cup. Now I'm kind of hedging my bets a little bit. Uh, but the only thing to say about that is, what is Gold Cup going to look like? In the past, we've had a Nations League team, and then we've had a Gold Cup team, Gold Cup roster, because the Europe based players go back to Europe, go back to train with their clubs. I don't necessarily know if Pochettino can do this, but I want him to ask these players if they can ask out of their training this season, because now this would be maybe a detriment a little bit to their club careers. This would be asking a lot of sacrifice, because you play in a long kind of tournament in the summer. Your legs are probably going to be shot by the time August comes around. Maybe you're not going to be up to pace with everyone else in your club team. So maybe your roster spot could be in jeopardy a little bit. But that said, we need to have reps with the main team, and we don't have them now. And I don't think asking Pochettino to play a bunch of guys from the MLS, guys that we know are not going to be part of our roster in next summer, I think is another kind of worthless exercise. So I hope we at least see at least some of these guys being able to play this summer instead, because we have a lot of things to sort out, to be honest. So if that can be the case and we can get some reps in Gold Cup, we don't necessarily have to win it, but we just have to do some exercises. Find out what players work in certain positions. It does feel like we are trying to play a little bit different than Greg Berhalter, than Greg Ball. We are. Frankly, I think we've seen a little bit of a different kind of energy levels kind of dip. Whether or not that's uh, a coincidence, an excuse, I don't know. I don't feel like we're pressing necessarily as high. One thing you can say about Greg is he did use his fullbacks very high up. Both occasions. It actually exposed us a little bit. We were not always the most creative, but we did have a fullback side, and we got a lot of crosses off. So we're trying to we're asking a new guy to come in with very minimal reps, and it's right now I think it's almost too much for him, because he's got he's got to deal with one set of roster for certain sort of games, and then he's asked to play with a whole different kind of group of guys that probably aren't going to be good enough for the main thing. And this whole exercise is not about winning the Gold Cup. This whole exercise is about getting us prepared to do the best that we can in a tournament that we host in a year. So, uh, anyways, I'm rambling a little bit. The things that can maybe get me to be a little bit more optimistic, at least for the future. Uh, yep, we'll have our two fullbacks back. We'll have we'll have our main attackers back. Now, one thing I can say is Anthony Robinson. You're seeing how important he is, and I don't. If he's going to be missing games, I don't think the ideas should be Scally. Maybe it could be Lind. I don't know why he wasn't invited for this. Maybe he's injured right now. If nothing else, there is someone named Noah Brown that is apparently a dual national that's had a great season for Eintracht Frankfurt. Uh, could Poach maybe convince him to join the U.S.? We haven't been hitting some success with the dual nationals of late. That could be a big hit as well, because I think Noah Brown would be able to contribute even with Anthony Robinson. He would give him maybe some things to think about as far as a starter. And again, people are going at Pulisic for this, and I'm not going to excuse him. I do think it was poor. But that said, I think it's just easy to go at him and ignore what Tasman looks like, what McKennie and Musa looks like out of position. With Scally and Sargent and Patrick, Achamayang, there were a list of poor performances here. Tim Ream, it just, I think it was all all up for grabs. Again, no Gio Reyna, no Johnny Cardoso as well, who bossed Real Madrid just a few weeks ago. Does Tyler Adams? Maybe that'll be something I get to a little bit later on. Does Tyler Adams have a start in this team? If everyone's fit, everyone's good to go. I don't know if that's the case. I might think Johnny Cardoso is better to be our number 6 because I think he can get the ball and he's better getting on the turn and better at moving it forward. Tyler Adams is Mr. Possession, Mr. Control. He's not nearly the best at recognizing danger defensively. He can be a good energy guy, but I do think I think there's maybe something to that. So and then again, missing our main strikers. Where do we go from here? What is our best 11? I already kind of talked a little bit about that. Uh, so some other issues I have, kind of for a little bit of a note. Can you play Musa, Weston McKennie, and Tyler Adams together? Now, this is what Berhalter was doing, and this goes back to Tyler Adams a little bit. Him in the Copa appearances, he wasn't playing in the run up to the Copa, and then all of a sudden he gets starts. They were saying he wasn't really fit. There could be some of that, but I just think for some reason things stall when he plays, and I don't really get what it is. And he's been fantastic for Bournemouth. He's been playing with Ryan Christie though, so we haven't found a player to play with Tyler Adams. Could you play Gio Reyna and Tyler Adams together? Gio Reyna can be kind of your Fabian Ruiz in a sense. Now, would because I don't think Gio Reyna is as bad defensively as people maybe think. Uh, could you do that versus lower teams? I guess you could say. Could you bully kind of teams doing that? That could maybe be something. But I actually think Johnny Cardoso has gotten to a situation where he's he's worthy of actually maybe getting starts over some of these guys that are more well known. He's been spectacular for Real Betis, and we just got unlucky that he was injured this past camp. Aiden Morris is another guy that I think could possibly get a look at. If nothing else, he- I I want to see him maybe get a look for Gold Cup. The last time we played Panama, actually, Aiden Morris actually kind of bossed it a little bit. So, Morris didn't have his best game for Mexico. The game after that, but at least first Panama, he wasn't bad. Uh, and then again, just the goal for Pochettino now is how find a solution to get the best out of Pulisic, get the best out of Gio Reyna, find a way to pair them together. If they can both play at the same time, I think you can. You'd have to maybe play Gio Reyna a little deeper, like I said. And Matt Turner, what do you do with Turner? And again, the other thing too is out of possession. Are we going to play a little bit differently? Because it doesn't feel we weren't able to turn Canada over. Pulisic. The problem with playing Pulisic as a 10 is he's not really the best out of possession, and he wasn't really the best out of possession when he's playing on the left either. So he doesn't really always track back his fullback. When he's playing through the middle, now the press is kind of a little bit disjointed a little bit too as well. So that's been one of the reasons why we've been a little bit worse out of possession is the shape has been a little bit different. Uh, and kind of the last thing to talk about here is what is our objective for this World Cup? And I don't think that's been properly defined. I keep hearing our mission is to grow the game, or to or is it to grow the game, or is it to win it? Is it to not be embarrassed? That there's been a whole host of things talked about. Uh, One thing I want to say is my first kind of real look at the sport outside of playing it, growing up, was that '98 World Cup. It being on TV and seeing game after game, on the weekends, it was different. And then 2006, and it's a little bit later on, because the other one happened in when games were on at 3 a.m. So I missed the one in Japan. 2006 comes around, and I think that really did kind of change me forever. I started following club football after that, and the point I'm trying to get at is a World Cup can have a lasting impact on people's lives. It can get people to all of a sudden just join, become fans that maybe aren't. So us performing better will maximize that. We're going to be playing on main Fox in prime time. You imagine that it's going to get casuals to see. So if we perform well, the game can grow. But how are we looking to grow? That's another thing too. One thing I'm very curious about is this new deal announced with USL, where it feels like they've agreed to install promotion relegation in their setup. So teams that are successful from the lower divisions can move up to the higher ones. Now, it's not going to include the MLS, but uh, I do think this is maybe the way going forward. Grow the game from these lower divisions in counties and cities outside the main metro areas, and I think that's a way to also expand scouting. See if someone fell through the cracks, that maybe missed out on youth soccer development. Maybe someone was smaller growing up, and all of a sudden they hit a growth spurt. Maybe someone wasn't able to get into, the collegiate system or not. But someone all of a sudden starts really performing well in USL. You know, I think eventually, I don't necessarily know if we're there now, but eventually, when it comes to doing call ups, we need to start looking at USL just as much as we do with MLS. In my opinion, I think that's because it's not just it's not a situation where you just have guys that are maybe a little bit older and it's kind of a retirement league or not. To me, it's become a little bit of a development league. There have been a couple of games that have been on ESPN that have broadcast maybe a championship game, and the quality of soccer, if nothing else, it's higher than college. Professional is what you would expect. So I think that is a way to grow the game. You'll get communities that uh, maybe don't have necessarily a professional sports team. Maybe it's too small a city to do that, but they have a USL team, and and it just you have something to play for. Where you go from a lower division to get into a higher competition, and it just I do think that's a way to organically grow the game. Now, uh, that maybe could be kind of a ceiling to that. I think the other thing too is the Nations League games here were behind a paywall. It was on Paramount Plus. The way to grow the game is to not put all this stuff on paywalls. I understand pursuing a profit motive, uh, but I do feel like feels only one of these has been prioritized over many years, and it has been the profit motive. The other thing too is when you look at the youth games, the pay to play travel, the youth systems. I do think it's part of that too. It's not really about necessarily growing the game. It's about helping people, get the bag. Uh, this is kind of those are that the bit of a different discussion there, but I think that is when you talk about growing the game, that you can expand that out dramatically. I don't necessarily want to do that here. I think I've already done that a little bit in the past, so I don't necessarily need to do that here. So, uh, the next time we see the U.S. will be the Gold Cup. It's not that far away. Just the summer, maybe June or so. Uh, there's going to be the Club World Cup going on around the same time. I'm not necessarily going to talk about that. We will talk about the Gold Cup, I think. Uh, but we'll see. Kind of see where we are from there. Now, are there some guys that maybe on the fringes that we can see that maybe aren't necessarily part of the MLS kind of C squad, but maybe we're part of the Olympic squad? Kevin Paredes was part of the Olympic side. Someone like Cade Cowell, Caden Clark is another from like that former camp in January that actually didn't play that poor. There's a guy named Matso Milatovic would maybe be another that maybe we'll probably see feature in the Gold Cup. So there are we need to find who can play and who can't. And right now we don't have that answer. And the Gold Cup will be probably the last time we get a chance to really see that outside of the couple of friendlies after that. So we're only a year away. It feels like that's a long way away, but the international game it's not. So that's kind of where we are for U.S. soccer, and see how we're doing for time. See how we're doing with the top 10. That's not too bad. So we'll do a little bit of a top 10 kind of table. We'll see how we're doing. See how we're doing here. A lot has changed since I last talked about this. Liverpool had a week of hell. Man United have now all of a sudden have a bit of a resurgence. They looked quite good in that second half, at least versus Arsenal, and maybe you'll talk a little bit about that. All of a sudden, Man United are able to get their wingbacks much higher up, And I think a couple of things have happened here where Harry Maguire isn't getting all these starts anymore. They've moved to Ligt almost to be a little bit further out wide. They're trusting Lenny Yoro, and I think their Arsenal game they were even playing someone like a Lindelof. Uh, and they were playing a guy named Heaven that was getting some pretty good minutes too. Now that said, I think in Leicester game they lost Heaven to a pretty bad injury, so it's one step forward, maybe two steps back. Unfortunately, as far as that goes, but you may, if nothing else, you are seeing a little bit more of an idea of them getting forward. Patrick Dorgu or Dallo, they both are getting higher up. Dallo is maybe playing a little bit more on the right side than not. It does feel like the wing backs are getting more involved, and when you do that, you can be a little bit more of a counter team. Bruno has been really big for them in a couple of these games as well, especially in the Europa game as well. A couple of these, you look at who it's been against. Leicester. It's probably what you would expect to do against Leicester, but they were pretty good versus Arsenal. So I do think I've been pretty critical of Man United. So you can give them their flowers because that wasn't a game where it was a fluke. Frankly, Raya had to make a number of really big saves just to keep Arsenal from getting a point. Man United maybe unlucky in that respect. Forced Raya into making some pretty big saves. I think Mazurai was one in the second half that they do a really good job of being able to get wide, and it's one wing back to the other that's able to make a pretty good run that Arsenal weren't able to track. Man United are a bit of a counter team, the way they set up, and they've at least started to kind of use a little bit more of that. It feels like they finally, and it feels like they are getting a little bit, they're getting what they need out of Bruno Fernandes. That's another thing that you wonder how the new shape has been. That's been another piece of the puzzle as well. It seems like they're playing Joshua Zirkzee and Rasmus Højlund together. It's not just one or the other. And Rasmus Højlund, at least in the Sociedad game that I saw, was getting a lot of looks. He was making some pretty good runs, and it just wasn't going for him. And then apparently he did score finally for first Leicester, so it finally did go for him. So that is where Man United are. The loss of Heaven could be pretty bad. That happened a couple of weeks ago. It's people maybe have already kind of forgotten about that. But I do think they have Lenny Yoro back, and Lindelof didn't look too bad in that game versus Arsenal. So Man United maybe have some depth to change things around a little bit. Being able to play a higher back line is everything for this team. That's the reason why I don't think you can do this with Harry Maguire. Uh, I think that's maybe the kind of the reason for the resurgence a little bit more. So that's where they are, but that's just kind of getting to Man United. Arsenal uh, is the points gap a little too much. They might be able to get Saka back, and we've already seen they had Martinelli back. They might have Saka back for Real Madrid. That's what they're saying. So the gap now is 12 points. And Arsenal do go to Anfield to play Liverpool head to head. So it could be maybe 9 points. Um, and we'll see. The international window has finally been upon us, and I don't know if Liverpool had any kind of injuries to talk about. I'll have to think about that. But they were missing Trent Alexander-Arnold for the foreseeable future because of what happened versus PSG in the second game, and that's kind of where. And the more news actually just broke about Alexander Arnold, so I'll get to that a little bit as well. Uh, it will to kind of finish off. Speaking of Liverpool, Slot's kind of in a weird kind of spot because everything has been kind of going smoothly for him, and now we're starting to see a little adversity. We're not seeing everything kind of go their way. As a Liverpool fan, does give me a little kind of nightmares about last year as well with the same kind of players. I think Slot hasn't rotated players enough. I think you're starting to see the legs kind of look a little bit tired. An international window just happened where a lot of the guys were forced to play with their club teams. Alexis McAllister played both games for Argentina. Virgil van Dijk played all his games for Holland. Salah played all his games for Egypt. I think you need to get in a situation where you need to rotate more. If nothing else, feature Elliott and Endo way more. Also Chiesa, and I'll get to Chiesa a little bit later on. the only reason why Liverpool scored versus Newcastle in the cup game was Chiesa off the bench. Finally someone's able to, and through the middle, finally someone's able to, and it's Elliott. Elliott's has the through ball to find him. Uh, I don't understand why Chiesa hasn't got more minutes. Maybe you don't Slot doesn't fancy him for training. I don't really know what it is, but here's a guy that can get the ball on net. He's not afraid to get a shot off, and frankly, that's what's been missing in a couple of these games now. Uh, Another thing too is I need Nunez to start. That's been a bit of a bugaboo now for a little bit for a while now. He gets to start for Southampton. Liverpool, he scores, and Luis Diaz assists for him there. Nunez doesn't start for PSG after basically kind of helping to get the goal for Elliott, or set up the goal for Elliott in the first game. Doesn't start again. Jota starts, and again we kind of struggle a little bit here. And I think what happened with PSG is as Nunez came on, Trent Alexander-Arnold came off after Trent was basically kind of starting to boss the game a little bit. I think that dramatically impacted how good Nunez could have been. Nunez wasn't necessarily great. You can maybe say that, and then he missed the PK, and I think he was maybe punished for missing the PK because they go on to the Newcastle game and they lose 2-0. They lose 2-1. It was 2-0 after not having a shot at all in the first half, and Jota, they couldn't get Jota the ball at all, and Jota actually had a miss that if Nora Nunes would have done that, that would have been the viral kind of take, people would have been harping on. I'm just in a situation where Slot, I don't really like where his head is at the minute, because he doesn't seem to understand if you're going to, because right now, at least for Newcastle, the idea was to just go long, and what you're doing is you're going long to a team that's playing Dan Burn in your back line. Now maybe you can get behind him, but Jota doesn't have the pace to get behind him necessarily. Salah wasn't able to beat his man, and Luis Diaz wasn't able to do as well. And Liverpool were just giving the ball away for fun, where it was painstaking that they weren't starting Darwin Núñez that game. I like Jota off the bench basically, and you find a way to use Jota a little bit differently, or move Jota to the left side just to have someone to be in the box, or maybe Chiesa. I don't really know, but right now Slot has maybe the international break came at a good time because the team was kind of running on fumes a little bit, but Liverpool do have that 12-point lead at the minute as well. They are on 70 points, and then Arsenal behind them on 58. You have in the 1-1 game with Man United, the Raya error on the free kick. A lot of talking about the free kick where maybe the ref kind of gave a little bit too. I think it was like 11 feet or whatever it was uh, too big of a gap for Bruno to exploit, and he did. But I think the issue for Arsenal is that left side defensively, the fullback side was getting cooked. And I don't, Calafiori, I don't really know if he's a defensive minded kind of fullback. Lewis Skelly kind of plays, maybe he can do the defensive work. But he can also go in and he's gotten himself sent off a couple of these times. So I do think the issue as well is they're not using the fullback side to offer some width either. They always use him kind of to play through the middle. Uh, and but there were some positives as well. Martinelli came on and actually looked pretty good. Declan Rice was used a little bit differently. It almost seemed like they were using Declan Rice to kind of try to be a little bit more in the box, and he's 6 foot, 6'1". You can maybe say something there. I thought Odegaard played a little bit better. It felt like Odegaard was playing more kind of in his own kind of area where Timber wasn't always crowding his space. So there were some things to like about for Arsenal in that Man United game, at least offensively. Defensively, though, they probably did get a little away with one, and then they beat Chelsea 1-0 after Marino. Just a corner kick, they were to put it away, and then Chelsea weren't able to offer anything after that. So Arsenal, we'll see what the way they are. They've got a pretty big tie with with Real Madrid now coming up, and it's a weird situation because Arsenal struggle with teams that sit back against them, and you force Arsenal to try to break them down. Man, Real Madrid aren't necessarily going to be that way. Now they can bunker down as good as any of them as well, and Ancelotti actually is quite crafty at doing that. But that said, Arsenal have a back line that probably can't handle Mbappe running through them. Um, I really don't think it's the worst draw for them. That I could be eating my words. We'll have to see. Someone like a Jude Bellingham might actually be the most important player in that tie, and we'll see if maybe they can stick Declan Rice on Jude Bellingham. Uh, the one person that looks like could be really vulnerable would be maybe on the left back side. Calafiore has looked really rough when he has played defensively. We saw that for versus West Ham as well. Does Rodrigo have an ability to just kind of, get by him a little bit? On Vinny's side, can Timber take on Vinny and lock him up? I kind of think he could. I don't hate the draw for Arsenal. Now, going forward, how are you going to score? Because uh, we'll see how Arsenal are able to do. If Arsenal can get Saka back, Saka versus Mindy benefits Arsenal. I think they'd like that matchup. Now, will Saka be that kind of player? We'll have to see. Maybe now Arsenal aren't going to have Kai Havertz. That's one player they're not going to be able to get back. But for the most part, maybe this can actually have them having a chance. We'll have to see. Two big ties there. Maybe they can go on a run, and who knows if they can really close that gap on. It's going to depend on what Liverpool do. If Liverpool start to drop points, then Arsenal are back in it. And they turn around and have a pretty big game with Everton. As everyone returns. So if not, that gap could possibly over. Maybe Arsenal can focus a little bit more energy on the Champions League as well. And I don't think it's the worst tie for them, to be honest. We'll have to. I thought that a couple years ago when I thought it was possible they could meet up, and that was before they lost. That was because mostly I was looking at Saliba and Gabriel allow them to handle with that a team playing with a lot of pace behind them. So we'll see how that is. If Real Madrid though get an early lead or get ahead in the tie, and they will kind of sit back, and then that's when Real Madrid could possibly give Arsenal some fits because Ancelotti's side is very good at playing that kind of style when they need to. But it'll really depend on who gets the early goals, who is able to control the tie. But for the most part, I don't think it's the worst draw for Arsenal. And then number three in the table is Nottingham Forest. So since I last did a podcast, they beat Man City with a Hudson-Odoi counter goal. The stats weren't necessarily great for either side, but I think Man City only had 2 or 3 shots the entire second half. They could not, they had all this possession, and they just weren't able to do anything with it. Pep kind of lost his head a little bit. He was trying to swap Savinho and Doku on either wings. He was trying them on both. Not able to get Foden, involved again. Holland had 2 shots the entire game, and both came before the 17th minute mark. So not able to get Holland involved. Kevin De Bruyne is another kind of situation where to me, it feels like if he's available, he almost has to play. And the weird thing about this is the last time Man City played Nottingham Forest was back in December. It was when City were going through one of the their hell stretches where they just couldn't win a game to save their lives, and they beat Nottingham Forest 3-0, and it was the best Man City had looked the entire year. And actually, looking back, it's probably one of the more kind of best performances of any team all year because Nottingham Forest has been so good defensively, and Man City made them look very, very bottom tier in that game. But that was a game that they used Jack Grealish in midfield a little bit differently. They used Kevin De Bruyne just to be a surgeon, and they were just able to find Holland some cheap goals, and everybody used Gvardiol to actually be providing some width as opposed to the way they've been using him instead. When you look at Man City, I think their downfall, I've already spoken about that, is Pep getting away from fullbacks, traditional fullbacks. And, losing Kyle Walker, losing the pace that he has, but Kyle Walker never really was able to get forward as far as being a reliable kind of crosser, but at least he had some pace. Losing that, playing Rico Lewis on that side doesn't really work. He gets bullied. Uh, and then the other thing too is playing center backs, Gvardiol, Ake, whoever it is, it doesn't seem to work either. And I think they've kind of missed a little bit of that. So, and I think they actually just lost Gvardiol to injury. Uh, and then Nottingham Forest, that's Man City, and then Nottingham Forest turned around and they beat Ipswich and thumped them 4-2 and some really nice goals in this. And uh, 2 games where Chris Wood isn't really the feature man. It's Hudson Odoi in one game, and it's Anthony Lanka in the other. So, and Nottingham Forest had that kind of lull period where they shipped 5 goals to Bournemouth. They had uh, they I think they drew to Fulham in a game when they were thoroughly outplayed versus Fulham as well. So you're starting to see them dip a little bit, and then they were able to pick themselves up. They had that crazy game versus Newcastle which didn't really, make sense. They were able they were losing like 4-0, and they were able to come back to at least, make it, I think it was 4-3 or 4-2, where possibly that could have ended, actually, for all. Uh, but they've just turned around and been able to, get 2 wins on the back, and one being Man City, and they've got a bit of a point separation now between them and 4th place. Barring collapse, Nottingham Forest are going to be a Champions League side, and not just for 4th place. It looks like 5th place is going to be a Champions League side next year, either. Anyways, so what a job that Nuno Espirito Santo has done. This is a team last season that was the very last place team to reach safety. The team below them was relegated, and they only did it by the skin of their teeth. Uh, it's also a club that took a big risk. They did not care about the PSR. They did not care about the points sanctions. They spent, and they spent well. And, they after he being hit with point sanctions, they went out and they bought Elliot Anderson this past summer. So, really, the main thing to me is they went out and they recruited a youngster on Manchester United that wasn't getting enough game time, wasn't getting looked at. The Man United really did screw up on Anthony Elanga. And then likewise with Chelsea, they looked at Hudson Odoi as a player that most Chelsea scouts thought was going to be their best academy prospect for the the most successful academy prospect in years, a generation type of youth player. And then he has that injury to his Achilles. Uh, uh, Bayern Munich wanted him when he was 17 or 16. This is a guy that I've known about when he was really young, and he has that Achilles injury, and he's never really able to be the same kind of player. He goes over to Bayern Leverkusen, did not have a good stint in Germany either, and they took a chance on him to give him a loan, and then they were able to buy him as well. And man, has that really benefited them. One thing worth saying is versus Bournemouth, versus Fulham, when they had that little stretch, they didn't have Hudson Odoi. Getting him back has been everything. So you've got a creative player on the left side. You've got a creative wide player on the right side. Both are direct. Both can make these runs, or both can do something with the ball. And then you got a finisher in Chris Wood, who's always going to be an annoyance to center backs. Nottingham Forest are doing something that is unique here. I've spoken about that in the past as well. There's been this obsession about having 70-80% of the ball and dominating, finding a way to fit as many players in midfield as much as possible, just to control the game. Nottingham Forest do not care about that. They've got the lowest possession in the league, and they're with the 30% of the ball that they're getting, they're still getting 6, 7, 5 looks on goal, and they're putting them away. Um, and if that is a formula that I don't know if that'll work long term. I don't know if that'll work in the Champions League necessarily, but at least here, and when they do have a chance, when they are chasing the game, that is maybe where they struggle a little bit because they don't really have, to me, the most kind of out of possession kind of structure. They're very good defensively, but as far as winning the ball back, maybe not necessarily as much. But who cares? Right now, the formula is working. This is a formula that, again, this is almost the exact same team outside of Elliot Anderson, in my opinion, that went from being absolute bottom tier to being otherworldly good, and a Champions League team. Third place in the table, and they're above Chelsea. Speaking of a team that or club that has spent a lot of money, Chelsea have gone from basically pushing Liverpool and Arsenal, where I think I did a pod in December where I was talking about them. I was downplaying their chances. I actually think I can prop myself to saying I still thought Arsenal were the threat to Liverpool, not Chelsea or City. That said, I did like what I saw when Chelsea played Brentford, and I think the weird thing to me is we haven't seen that Chelsea team since Brentford. We haven't seen them, using the fullbacks for width. We've seen this more kind of weird kind of almost Pep influence shape where they use fullbacks as kind of additional midfielders. Now that said, they've lost Nicholas Jackson and they've lost Madueke, and with that, they've lost any intensity. They've lost any ability to counter. Sancho doesn't like doing it. You have Neto, but they're playing you. They're using Neto through the middle. They're not really using him to to be out on the wide areas. They they don't have and versus Arsenal and they were missing Cole Palmer. They had Palmer versus Leicester, but he missed a PK. Uh, Chelsea have hit a stretch here. Now they are missing. I think they're missing Nicholas Jackson significantly. But the other thing too is they do not have intensity when they try to play out of possession. Uh, they made a decision last year to sack Pochettino, and they shipped Conor Gallagher uh, out to Atletico Madrid to basically they did that to get João Felix, who now is at AC Milan. So we'll see how that's going. I think that was a massive, massive error because it doesn't feel like Enzo Fernandez and Moses Caicedo work together. That's been a very weird partnership the entire time. Enzo Fernandez and Romeo Lavia maybe can work together, but it feels like they're struggling to find a way to get the best out of Enzo Fernandez. Now, Enzo likes getting the ball from deep. He's not really like he doesn't really like being a guy that makes forward runs and being ahead of the ball. It feels like Chelsea's been kind of forced to play that way. Um, Chelsea have made some mistakes, and this is a team that was probably was overperforming back in December, and their manager even made a statement early on that his team's not a title contending side, and he was right. Since then they have been on a very bad downward spiral since about mid mid or late December. They've not had a good 2025. That said, they are still in fourth, but if this slide continues, I don't really know where they are going to finish. They could be finishing outside of a Champions League spot. Speaking of, I don't necessarily know if I would go here, but on 48 points is Man City in fifth now. So they lose to Nottingham Forest. Holland again only had 2 shots in that game and none after the 17th minute mark. And then the other thing too was in that game, Gomez, Nico Gomez came off, Kovacic came on, and they all of a sudden they were getting counted on. Um, then they have the Brighton game, and they draw to Brighton 2-2, and basically they needed Carlos Baleba to misfire very very late, or it would have been worse. Omar Mimish, got a start and played well. That's good. That's kind of been the one kind of positive. I mentioned how Kevin De Bruyne needs to maybe play. I don't really know where Foden fits in, but Marmoush needs to probably play for them as well. If nothing else, he's a bagsman. And when you don't have Holland, he's someone that at least kind of converts things. And what he does is he draws a PK. Holland converts that, and then he's able to get on the end of a pretty good shot for the second goal. But Brighton were able to get back in. They equalized after Ortega just doesn't even move on a free kick. I don't really know what Man City's going to do for keeping. It's not going to be Ortega. If they move on from Ederson, it's not going to be Ortega. He's this game and Arsenal, the Arsenal game when they lost 5-1 or whatever it was. Ortega didn't have a good game there either. Maybe he's kind of in the just kind of going through the dials. And then Brighton score on a corner kick. This one was just unlucky or misfortune. Kushyanov, I think it's the own goal. But that said, it's another game where just City look completely lost out of possession, and it's another game where Pep again just not playing traditional fullbacks or do in their traditional role. I think they're suffering a little bit, in my opinion. It backfired. Brighton had no issues going up the wings with Matoma and Menta. And again, in the middle, Nico Gonzalez is good of a player. He looks on the ball. He's not Rodri out of possession. I think they're struggling a little bit there. In the Brighton game, Foden and Kevin De Bruyne don't start. Holland, that was kind of another thing too. Doku, gets his moments and has some success, but Man City just they want the season to probably be over with, but it's not over yet. They're in fifth now. They're in a Champions League spot now. We'll see what they do, how they finish out the season or not. If they can, usually they find a way to just kind of just to get results to go in their way, but it doesn't. The way that they're in, I think any team that actually tries to go with them, that doesn't just play scared, has a chance to do it. Whether or not they bring in Nico Gonzalez, I don't necessarily know if that's really fixed them entirely because you don't know who you play with him. Bernardo Silva, his legs look entirely gone. He's been a very good soldier for Pep. It looks like Pep has run him to the ground. He looks like Jordan Henderson or James Milner now. So who do you play next to Nico Gonzalez? I don't think it's maybe it's Rico Lewis, but I don't think it's Gundogan. I don't think it's Bernardo Silva. So a couple of those, maybe it's Kovacic. Maybe that actually you play both of them together at the same time. Um, but they're struggling a little bit here, and then things get really wild. So Man City is on 48 points. Sixth place is Newcastle on 47. And Newcastle, they had the West Ham game, and Isak was able to feature, which kind of surprised me a little bit. Unfortunate there. And then they play. Then they go have the cup final versus Liverpool, and they beat Liverpool. And Dan Burn, it had to be him. He has his moment versus Liverpool, and I think if nothing else, the that gets them into Europe. I don't necessarily know if it's Champions League, but winning that cup final gets them into Europe. Uh, Newcastle are right there, and if they can go on a run and maybe get into a Champions League as well, if they don't get Champions League spot, I think they probably are going to lose Alexander Isak. So whatever happens will depend a lot on that. If they sell Isak, though, they sell him for 120 million or whatever it's going to be. They can go out and buy Brian and Bremo. They can go out and buy Ugo Akikite, or they can go out and maybe Mateta if they want to go that way. They can still. You have Anthony Gordon, you have Akikite, and you have Embremo. That's still a very potent, front three. You can probably upgrade a little bit at the back line. You can probably upgrade a little bit for depth as well. So I think they're probably going to lose Isak either way, but especially if they don't get Champions League. Now, am I, as a Liverpool fan, trying to wish cast that a little bit, as I'm someone that sees Liverpool, suddenly linked to Isak all over and over again? I am. So no alternative motives there. Wink, wink. But anyways, the crazy thing about this is, Newcastle is just 1 point off City after Man City just destroyed Newcastle, where we thought maybe their season's going to actually collapse a little bit. And Eddie Howe's been able to get them to just kind of forget about that, and they are right here, and they are right here because they have someone like an Isak that is the second best goal scorer, maybe in Europe, if not, or at least striker like number 9 spot. Uh, if not, he's maybe pushing Holland a little bit. I don't really see a weakness in his game. Maybe fitness, you can say he does. He has missed some games here and there, but he is so lanky. He's quick. He's skillful with the ball at his feet. He can dribble. He makes very very clever runs into the box, and he's got a finish on him. Whether or not it's a first time finish, whether or not he can do stuff in the air, or he's got an absolute thunder strike on him that he can score from distance. He kind of is complete. And because you have that, and you have an ability to somewhat, control the middle of the field with the midfielders that they have, uh, they can probably go on a little bit of a run here. Now they are missing Anthony Gordon. I think it was only for red card though. It's not for injury. So they're doing this without him as well. Uh, and the thing is they can dramatically improve in a number of areas as well. Jacob Murphy has been a very good kind of soldier for this club, but if you think if they could find a way to get Brian and Bremo or someone else, they would try to do that. Brentford are going to want to lose him, but that would probably be that makes probably the most sense in my opinion. They probably messed up selling Yakuba Menta to Brighton because Menta probably would have been able to start for Newcastle this past season. Uh, there's a lot of ways for Newcastle to improve this side, a side that's already pretty good. Now the only thing is when you look at the back line, they don't have an ability to play a back line that's high up, and that's when you go up a level, Champions League and trying to press a little bit higher up. That's where the limits of Dan Burn and Fabian Schär are going to show. And Dan Burn has his moment, and again, it's fitting because I've been the one that's been kind of attacking him a little bit. So it is kind of crow a little bit on my end. I do still think that is where they need to improve. Sven Botman, can come in for one of those spots, but they need to find a way to bring in someone that can play a little bit of a higher line. Maybe someone like a Maxence Lacroix. I don't know. Just kind of throw. I know they've been linked to Mark Gahey as well to name another Palace player. Um, but that is where Newcastle are, and then on the same points is Brighton at 47. And all they did is they beat Fulham with a Yao Pedro PK. So bit of a kind of a close kind of a game there. Van Hecke header to get the first one, and they have a Yao Pedro PK, and then they draw Man City. Fulham though are right there on 45 points. So that's just 2 points off Brighton and Fulham on 45. That's just a game. That's just 3 points off Man City or Fulham. But they have Arsenal and Liverpool coming up, so who knows if they're able to do what they're able to stick with that. But hey, if Fulham beat both, they're right back in this as well. And if nothing else, Fulham are going to be maybe who decides the title. If they get a result versus Arsenal and they don't versus Liverpool, that probably does seal it. That said, Arsenal are going to look at that game with revenge. Fulham have already gotten points off Arsenal. Fulham have already gotten points off Liverpool. That was the game with the red card versus Anthony Robinson. Uh, but they are right there. They lose to Brighton. It was just a very late game with the PK, but they turn around and they beat Spurs with Munoz and Sessegnon. That was when Spurs had a pretty good successful trip in Europe to advance. Fulham are right there, and if nothing else, Marco Silva. Whether or not they finish in eighth, whether they finish in fifth, whether they finish in ninth, Marco Silva has an unbelievable season where I continue to try to count them out a little bit here. Uh, they do go into games where maybe Raul Jimenez doesn't always finish for them, or that's where Munoz comes in here. Uh, they maybe they don't always have. It's either Plan B and it's either Plan A and Plan A 2.0. It's not really a different kind of plan. That said, they went out and they did a very good job to recruit Anderson, Joachim Anderson, and that pairing of Anderson and uh, and Calvin Bassey has been very very good for them. And that's one of the reasons you have a good back line that can handle being on the ball, being pressed, making decisions. That can also play a little bit higher up. You can pass some teams, to be honest, maybe are a little bit better, attack wise. So that's where Fulham are, and then Aston Villa are right there too on 45 points, and they advanced in the quarterfinals to face PSG. And I don't think that's the worst draw for Aston Villa. It's Unai Emery kind of that's kind of fun too. Unai Emery maybe the revenge game versus PSG. Aston Villa I think have Marco Asensio, that is a PSG player, and I don't know if he'll be able to play or not. I feel like he will be because he was able to play at least in this Champions League tie versus Club Brugge. Aston Villa, all they did was they beat Brentford 1-0. Could have been a little bit more than that. I think Alan Watkins was able to get that goal. Uh, Aston Villa are in ninth, and you think, man, they haven't had the best season, but they're not that far away. I think they're only 4 points off Man City here. So and then Bournemouth on 10th. So it is crazy how the top 10 is so congested. I can't remember a season like this, to be honest. There's no separation here in the top 10. There's separation between Liverpool and Arsenal, and then everyone else is just there within 2 games of either catching someone that's in fourth place, or 2 games of falling from fourth all the way to 10th. Uh, so they're not out of it. 7 points off the top five. Uh, but Bournemouth have started to slip a little bit, and they're probably hating that. So they have the 2-2 draw for Spurs. This is a game they had the 2-goal lead, and then Kepa made 2 mistakes. Beaten on basically a mishit cross from distance that goes in, and then Kepa comes out. He takes out the attacker for a PK. Son is able to convert. Bournemouth caught on the counter. Probably, your Kepa probably does have to come out, so it's more kind of a case of maybe you shouldn't be caught a little bit on the counter. Ryan Cook was a little bit, or Lewis Cook was a little bit out of position there. They're probably going for the game. You're probably upset that it's only that it's 2-1 when it probably should have been done and dusted. Bournemouth were unbelievably good for a lot of this game, where they were getting Spurs to turn the ball over with their pressure, and basically, the Spurs keeper had to make a lot of really good saves, Vicario, uh, but it wasn't to be, and the drop points there did feel like a loss than necessarily a draw, and then they went on to get beaten by Brentford. So back to back games where they dropped points. So that's the reason why they're now in 10th now. Um, beaten on 2 set plays, really, corner kick and a throw in. So Iriala probably is kicking himself with the Spurs results. Uh, and just again, the number of times they were able to get the ball in dangerous areas and just weren't able to put them away. I think it's interesting that they've gotten their kind of the first choice attacker in Evan Nilsson back healthy. I don't really know if he's better than Django Wadatar. Yeah, I don't necessarily want to blame this on on them, but I just think what we saw with Wadatar was working, and then Evan Nilsson coming back in, he's missing some chances. A lot of these chances did fall to him, and he wasn't able to put them away. Uh, Patrick Kluivert continues to have an unbelievable season for them. Kirkes, Dean Housen continues to be really, really good for them. I think Dean Housen was really impressive with Brentford in the games in the clips that I was seeing. And then Dean Housen played actually for Spain and did well versus the Netherlands. Uh, there's a lot of ways for this Bournemouth team to actually miss out on Europe, and that would be a little bit of a disappointment considering how good they've been. They probably are going to lose a lot of their core pieces this summer. Uh, but one thing I think you can say is Bournemouth are part of that theme where they haven't followed the conventional kind of wisdom, and I think one lasting theme to talk about here is teams. You have teams playing with a recognizable nine in Fulham, Newcastle, Nottingham Forest. Maybe you can use Bournemouth now with Evan Nilsson, though I don't really like doing that. You have teams that press really hard without the ball. So Bournemouth here, definitely. Newcastle. I think Liverpool, maybe, or not. And you have teams that maybe aren't playing with fullbacks in a traditional sense. And you've got your Chelseas, your Cities, and your Arsenals. And I think you're seeing a different way to play. Not everyone's following the same kind of footprint now. The game is about scoring goals. And again, whether you got 80% of the ball or 20%, if both teams have 4 shots on target, the possession is kind of meaningless. And the possession to me matters way more when you have the lead and you've got to make teams chase you. Other than that, I think we're seeing a different way how to look at this game state. I keep going back to that. So that's where we are there and see how we are doing for time. I got some time, so I'll talk about what happened with Liverpool's Hell Week and then end from there. So we get to the PSG game, and let's see how are we? So I think they actually started off pretty good. But you get to the 10 minutes and they've conceded to Dembele. Bit of a brain fart here. PSG do really well to play from the back. They beat Liverpool's press. Unbelievable pass by I think it's Mendes upfield 40 yards to Dembele. Dembele is able to run away from Kanate. Robertson then is beat by a run by Barcola getting behind him. But that said, I still think there's no reason for me, in my opinion, for Liverpool to get beat here. Barcola's cross into the box. Kanate just makes a miss, trying to clear the cross, and comes against the run of play as well. Dembele being able to run up the ball, fools Van Dijk and fools Kanate, so that's how you're able to get the free man. It's an unbelievable find by Mendes, and Mendes had his reps in the stratosphere after what he just did because he was really good and solid too. Uh, and there you go. All of a sudden, the tie is 1-1. This comes after Liverpool did start off pretty well, in my opinion. I thought that the energy was different. You saw a different strategy. Instead of sitting back like we saw in Paris, they were doing they were taking the game to them. They were pressing very, very high. They had the intensity in the middle from the start. And for the most part, what you saw in that first 10 minutes was PSG giving away the ball a lot. PSG were very sloppy, and it was working. Liverpool were getting lots of good chances and just weren't able to convert them. And PSG get one chance where everybody, one pass is able to beat the press, and that's the risk you get with pressing. And the one thing you can't say is, do you need to go out of the blocks and press as high up as possible to start? Maybe, maybe not. You get the Anfield crowd behind you. It was working, and that is kind of the issue. It was working until it wasn't. Uh, I still think though Robertson shouldn't get beat by Barcola making a run behind him. And then that said, Kanate just boot it out for a corner kick and live with it. Instead, he gets a little too cute, and there's a mishap, and Dembele is able to score the mishap. PSG fans were loving it because they felt Kanate probably should have been sent off in the first game. Probably were right. So fitting there. Uh, but again, Liverpool didn't start off bad. They had a number of chances. There was a solid block on Mendes. Again, just Mendes was unbelievable. So he probably I think he saved a goal here. There's a long ball from Szoboszlai to find Alexis McAllister. Great touch. Fools Vitinha, and then Mack in the box opts against the shot. Finds Salah again, and again, it's not a bad play from Mack, but again, I think it's not even the worst contact either as well. Just Mendes is right there to save the goal. Salah probably could have found the corner, but it is what it is. Salah was more involved than the week before, so there was something to say there. There's another chance Salah on a corner kick, whiffed, maybe you could say. Salah also got by Mendes, nice little dribble into the box, gets a rebound, quick shot, just misses wide. Different day, probably Salah does score this. Uh, and then, Van Dijk had a free header. That was blocked. Jota free header from a corner kick, just a little bit high. There was a counter on the corner kick as well. Salah tries a cheeky pass into Ryan Gravenberch into the box. It's stopped by Mendes reaching out a leg to block it again. So it could have been in on goal there. But Liverpool, despite the goal, did look up for it, did look threatening. They were winning the ball back in high areas. Szoboszlai and Alexis, I thought, were running the game. All this talk about Yao Neves and Vitinha, and I'm not going to downplay how good they were, Fabian Ruiz, but I think Liverpool were the better midfield in this game. The counter press was back as well. Robertson and Trent were playing very high upfield together and adding additional numbers in the final third, and it's risky as hell to do that with Valdezquia and um, and and uh, Barcola and Dembele, but because the shape in possession was almost a 2-4-4. To me, it felt like Liverpool were playing Brighton or Brentford, not to discount those clubs, as opposed to PSG. Liverpool were very, very aggressive in how high they had their numbers back, and they just had Van Dijk and Konate back by themselves. Maybe Gravenberch was, dropping a little bit to be a third man, but it was risky as hell. But that said, it was leading to chances. They were able to press much higher than before. They were able to squeeze the pitch. PSG, as good as they are, weren't able to get behind them and nearly as much. Outside of that goal, there was maybe one other time when Allison had to make a save, but for the most part, they had been nullified. But it was 1-0 at halftime, again, Allison did have to work maybe a couple of times. There was a Barcola and Dembele 1v1. And then there was a moment where Szoboszlai, maybe before the half, was kicked in the back of the leg. But yeah, they looked at it and it was nothing. But my thought at halftime was, okay, Liverpool are doing a pretty good job. They're doing at least a much better. They're being competitive. They're doing a much better job to take the game to Paris. Why wasn't Darwin Núñez starting? Jota was again losing the ball way too often. I don't think he was making the right runs that was needed. Salah's legs looked heavy. There needed to be someone else to be able to stretch their back line. And I just thought Diaz wasn't really doing it. I thought Diaz was at times playing against both the fullback and the demon in his head. That's kind of the note I had. Szoboszlai didn't sometimes know when to press high or sit back, and I thought that was maybe one of the cases where actually they scored on the Nunez pass, where Szoboszlai and Gravenberch were kind of played a little bit out of position there. I thought as the game went on, maybe the midfield's legs did look a little tired too, but at the same time, the second half starts and Liverpool get a second wind and are very, very, very good, and just really unlucky not to get a goal. Uh, frankly, here is where they lost the game. That's the note I have, because they have all this momentum and they weren't able to take advantage of it. But PSG were gettable in this kind of 10-15 minute stretch. The famed Anfield environment was working. Liverpool were all over them. PSG had 3 shots total in that second half. They could not get out of their own end. Andy Robertson looked like his 27, 25-year-old self again. He was bombing forward. He was being an extra number, taking gambles, winning duels, making sprints upfield. PSG could not handle him. But unfortunately, he's never not able to find the cross off. Donnarumma, though, had to make save after save, or was able to stop, had to come out and stop some pretty big crosses. There were 3 blocks as well that saved some goals, and it just felt like there was someone in the box that looks clean on goal and opted against shooting the ball. So it's one thing to struggle in a game. It's one thing to have a lot of control and then not able to create chances. It's another thing to create a whole lot of chances and then not have people to be able to finish them. And I thought as that second half was going on, they didn't have someone that was that had the right frame of mind to take a chance, that was more afraid of being blamed than necessarily going for glory. You have Salah, and that really was it. Luis Diaz would be another. Jota would probably fit into that as someone that would take a chance, but he wasn't really able to get a whole lot of looks. Again, this would be a case where I don't necessarily know if Darwin Núñez would necessarily be that kind of player as well, but Darwin Núñez would at least uh, frustrate you. But the other thing too is someone like a Chiesa maybe would have been able to take a chance, but that was frustrating. There were a number of times where someone was clean on goal and just they were looking to square it to a teammate, try to go for the easy goal, than to actually put it in. The only person with confidence, in my opinion, not even Salah, the only person with confidence in that second half that really wanted to take the game over was Trent Alexander-Arnold, and he did until he didn't. Uh, that whole second half was Trent Alexander-Arnold finding himself in interesting positions in the middle of the field where PSG could not contain him. Valvasquez was basically forced to follow him defensively, and he didn't want to do it. So Alexander-Arnold was just finding a way to be in the middle of the field. They were moving Gravenberch a little bit deeper. They were moving Konate out wide. They were moving Gravenberch almost to be kind of a center back out of possession, and they had Alexander-Arnold either in midfield or just kind of be an extra number ahead and he was being unbelievable. In fact, Liverpool do score. There's a Trent Alexander-Arnold cross that finds Szoboszlai for the goal. It's ruled out, but this comes after basically Trent Alexander-Arnold has a shot from distance. Donnarumma can only parry it. Szoboszlai goes for the loose ball. He looks fouled, but Alexander-Arnold's able to get on the loose ball, has another shot that strikes basically the goalpost, and then Alexander-Arnold's able to follow that shot off, and then able to square it to Szoboszlai for the tap in. It looks a good goal, but it doesn't count because in the build up, Diaz is offsides after Jota is able to play him in behind. Diaz probably could have timed his run a little bit better. Um, but this is just the way the game went. Liverpool were the better team in that second half, and then so you have that, and then there was another moment where there's let's see, Szoboszlai has a cross from Diaz, is a big block by Paco. That's probably going into the goal. There's a Van Dijk header that's saved by Donnarumma. This is all happening in like 8 minutes here. There's a Jota. He basically tries a backheel to play Szoboszlai in the box. There's a big block by Marquinhos, so that saves a goal as well. There's Salah leading a break, and he threads the ball into Diaz. There's no one near him, and Diaz opts to not shoot with his left foot. This drove me insane. And then after that, Donnarumma had a big save on another corner kick that was probably going to go into the net. Salah had a shot, and I think it's blocked by Kvaratskhelia. Uh, and then we have the changes. Jota was starting to maybe play a little bit better, starting to do some link ups, and he goes off for Núñez, though that's what I wanted in the first, so I can't really complain about that. But the main one was Kwanzaa had to come on, and he comes on and actually has a header that just hits the inside of the post. It's on a free kick. Any other, if it's just an inch to the other side, it goes in, it sneaks in. And then Kwanzaa had another free header on a corner kick that was just high. Probably could have done better on that. But Kwanzaa had to come on because Alexander-Arnold had to go off. And it's not necessarily like Kwanzaa played poor, coming in, but playing it right back as well. But he's not Alexander-Arnold. And it just after that injury happened, so went Liverpool's chances of finding a goal. Basically, that was a killer blow. Darwin comes on, and it comes on after Alexander-Arnold has to go off, and Núñez had some clever links, and then he also had some touches where what the f are you doing moments as well. That is the Núñez experiences I have in the notes. It probably is time for him to go. The fact that Liverpool are now linked to seriously linked, it's not just Liverpool reporters. It's Fabrizio. It's a number of people that are now trying to say that there's serious talk that they're looking at Julian Alvarez at Atletico Madrid or Isak or maybe Etikite at Frankfurt. It feels like they are looking at a number 9. So whether or not they lose Salah or not, it does feel like Núñez might be the one out the door. Diaz has been kind of linked as well. Diaz did not. Diaz has moments where you go unbelievable. What a player, and then he has moments where you go, oh, that's why I hate you. And he picked a bad time to have one of those in this game as well, where he gets in good spots and just doesn't want to take the chance on. That to me is when I was talking about you have players that were maybe too afraid of the moment, that didn't want to go for the glory, were afraid of maybe missing. That was Luis Diaz in this game. He had a couple moments to put it away and didn't. I was watching that. I was thinking, Chiesa on this side. Chiesa getting that chance that Salah played through. Would he do worse? I wouldn't think he would. Chiesa again doesn't really get minutes. But that was the time to get him. That was the time to get him was in that second half when Trent Alexander-Arnold was playing. I had it's homerish, but I have the opinion that Liverpool win that game, win that tie, and go through. They get that second goal and see it out. Had Alexander-Arnold not been hurt, and that was now there's other news now about Alexander-Arnold, which I'll get to as well. So regardless of how if they're able to get him back before the end of the season or not, they're not going to have him next season. That it looks like that's actually becoming more and more official, more and more real. One of the first of the three to not be renewing, and we'll see if that's going to be the case for the others as well. The contract situation has to be a distraction now, and I think it's criminal by the club to let it get to this point. Uh, it's not a whole lot of work to when you got someone running down to 2 years. Get them to sign an extension, maybe put in a release clause, do something where you don't get into a situation where you possibly lose three of your best players, three all timers generationally, on freeze, and it's not like all three have had outstanding seasons. It's not like you can look at them and say, "Oh, the age, it's time for them to go anyways. We're not gonna lose." It's not the player of old, it's the player now. You're not in that situation now. Now you possibly could if you extend them and, a couple years down the road, Virgil van Dijk is, on the other side of 30, Salah as well. Maybe you can get in that situation. You don't wanna do a whole lot of wages on players like that. I can understand that. But to get it to this point has been really, really bad. And whether or not they win the league or not, I just think it's been poor planning by the club. And there's going to be a massive rebuild even before they were going to lose players. And now who knows what this is going to look like. So that said, you want to trophy pile up, and it doesn't look like they are going to be able to because they lose to PSG in PKs. It goes to extra time, and extra time this is where Liverpool lose basically all momentum. Now, you understand Slot having to make some changes because uh, you can't ask everyone to uh, the energy levels were dipping. PSG were the better side in the second half, but also what Slot did is he took off probably his best PK takers in Alexis McAllister and Szoboszlai. Uh, but maybe that said, he was trying to get some extra legs in midfield to try to win the game. He takes off. But that's a PSG with a better side. Allison had to make some saves. Desiree Doué came on and actually took over the game. Desiree Doué looks like uh, you know, Neymar. Desiree Doué looks like he doesn't even start for France or start for PSG, but he looks what a find he is. We saw him a little bit in the Olympic side for France this past year, and I forget what club he was at beforehand, but he doesn't even start for PSG. But every time he comes on, it just looks like the ball sticks to his feet. And he's just so quick with it, and he's good at making moves. And man, does he have a shot on him? He terrified the hell out of me when he came on. Uh, so it felt like Liverpool were fortunate just to get it to extra time, and then you get there and Darwin Núñez misses, and then lo and behold, Curtis Jones misses, and it is what it is. Liverpool looked worse after the changes. Curtis Jones came on and wasn't nearly as comfortable on the ball as Szoboszlai and Alexis, and you saw the difference. It wasn't like for like. Uh, it is what it is. Gakpo also got some minutes, and he looked like he could hardly run. So all of a sudden, you understood when maybe he wasn't starting games here. I thought you probably could have subbed Diaz off and kept Jota on just because you needed someone to finish those chances. But it was frustrating. But the frustrating thing was it wasn't for a lack of effort. It was just a lack of quality. 19 shots, only 3 on target. 10 shots in the first half, and only 1 on target. So that's just they were. I just thought they were unlucky. Lots of times where PSG had to have some pretty big blocks just to keep them in the game. And Donnarumma had a really good game as well. Made the 2 PK saves and fitting because Donnarumma was maybe the butt of jokes after the first game, after letting the Elliott chance get by him. Uh, but I just thought, watching that second half, at least that 10-15 minute stretch, in that second half, the note I had is, again, Liverpool were treating this like they were Brighton or Brentford. It was not a Champions League, side that's expected to maybe win this thing. And PSG are a good side, and just knowing how PSG good were in the first game, because basically PSG made Liverpool look like that in the first tie. So pretty much evenly matched over the two games, in my opinion. But that said, they are deserving. So you can go back to the first game. Liverpool probably got lucky with the red card. Alisson had to make 10 saves at a minimum in that first game as well. The tie could have been done and dusted anyways. So I can't say anything about it. One thing I can say is the lack of the ability to really change things from the bench. The injury to Gakpo has just affected this team in a way that's hard to say. He was the only one that was producing outside of Salah, and now you're kind of missing that. I think the story of the season has been Salah kind of bailing out mediocre team performances, and here he maybe isn't necessarily at his best, but uh, it's the first game that they've been scoreless at Anfield since like the Nottingham Forest game. So they needed someone to step up without Salah being on it, and they weren't able to get it. Jota has never really fit the lone striker role. To me, he's a second striker, if that makes sense. And I just think you needed Nunez to have that physical presence. Not starting him was a mistake by Slot, and we saw that versus Newcastle as well. I just feel you can bring Jota off the bench for situations when you have lots of the ball and you just need someone to again finish chances. I'm repeating myself there. Uh, so it is a bit of pill to swallow. The Trent Alexander injury was everything though. And just and again just the way that the game ended, the way that the season is ending. If they do only get the league, I am feeling a little that is hearing myself say that does feel a little ridiculous to say, because I didn't pick Liverpool to finish in the top four to start the season. I didn't like what they did. They did nothing in the summer window, and I just felt I watched this team lose gas last season, and I didn't think I just felt not replacing that or not changing that. I just thought you were going to get the same kind of outcome, and I did just think they've been a little bit fortunate. To be honest, they've been fortunate with injuries for the most part. They've been fortunate to have Salah have it basically an all timer kind of season. Um, and I just think January was another situation where you had a moment to maybe do something. Valvasquelia was there. And PSG, basically lap him up, and Vavasquez helps them beat, helps them go through Liverpool. So, and it wasn't just him. There were a number of attackers that were available to maybe on loan or not that did make some moves that could have been there to help out from the bench to be there to add a difference when things weren't going well with the plan A or plan B, and it is what it is. So. I do think you can blame a little bit on the ownership there. I think you can also blame a little bit on Slot. The lack of rotation, then the lack of trust in midfield. I think it's starting to play out. I think another thing too is I haven't said this yet. This is happening during Ramadan, and I don't think it's a coincidence that Salah looks a little out of energy. I think Kanate looks a little bit out of energy too, and that's that. I'm not blaming that. I'm just saying you need to kind of factor that in a little bit. You need to have maybe a plan again, a plan B for that. And Salah has been drained the entire season. You just don't have anyone that can replace what he has to offer. So a lot of people were going at Salah for not having maybe the best stretch, best game here, best game was Newcastle. I do think the Ramadan thing is an excuse, a legitimate excuse. I'm not again. It is what it is. Um, but that said, he he played better than it looked. He created two really good chances, and Mendes just had really good blocks. But that said, you have someone like Chiesa and him not getting minutes at all. I just think he can't do worse than Diaz or Gakpo unfit. And if Salah is out of energy, why not Chiesa can do there. Maybe you can play Chiesa through the middle. Um, I he I fail to see how uh, he can't offer you anything because I just saw what he did with Newcastle as well. But I had this note before the Newcastle game. So that said, you know, team's going to be different, but the team can also improve. The striker spot, the left wing spot, the left back spot with Robertson probably be on his last legs. The number 6 spot, could you find a way to maybe play Ryan Gravenberch a little bit differently? He's done an unbelievable job, but I still don't know if he really is a lone DM. Someone like an Adam Wharton, who I continue to rave about. Um, because it doesn't feel like slot trust Endo, but even though that said, it feels like the fans or Endo is starting to get more minutes there. He's the one player that it feels like is finally, one slot over. Um, but I just think there are a lot of ways to improve this. I was looking at what PSG had with Kvaratskhelia, Desiree Dure, Dembele, Barcola. It just feels like Lee Kang in they have like 6 strikers that they can go to. Galo Ramos. As well, just they're spoiled for attacking talent. They loaned out Kolo Muani to Juventus. It's just I'm looking at Diaz and Nunez who have 2 left feet striking the ball. So this team can go 2 ways. They can improve. They get the contract sorted out, and there's only haircuts here to improve this side. But they lose the players with the contracts. You can't replace them. The money ball line, you can replace in the aggregate. I You can try. I think you would have to seriously change how the team plays. I think you'd seriously have to change expectations. There's no one out that does what Salah does. There's no one out there what does what Trent does, and Van Dijk as well. That I would be happy with Conference League football if they lose all 3, and because it was probably going to require 150 million, 200 million in investment, anyways. Especially if you're going to go after a number 9 like an Isak or Julian Alvarez that are going to be 100 million plus. You got to look at the left back situation. Maybe you need another midfielder as well. You need maybe another center back just for depth. If you lose Van Dijk, you need another. So they're going to be player outgoing sales as well. You imagine you could probably get some money for Diaz, probably get some money for Nunez, maybe some money for some of the academy kids, like a Ben Doak, Tyler Morton, maybe sell him. But there's I can only kind of go there. I'm going to try to enjoy the rest of the season with this team, and then just kind of it'll be up for grabs because I do fear it's going to take a database team to nail everything because I don't think there's like for like out there. You can go the cheap route, and maybe that can find a way to compete for Champions League. But I feel like a lot of these teams are getting smarter in their recruitment, where it's not it's harder to if you lose generational players, it's harder to keep those levels. So I don't know. I don't want to necessarily deem a whole lot. Another that I have is system versus players. No, this is a game where if Mane and Firmino are playing, I think Liverpool beat PSG. Now that's not going that far out, but Mane getting into situations where Diaz was. It just that game reminded me how good that front 3 was, and I just think that would have been a game where that the reason why that front 3 was special is all 3 never had stinkers at the same time. Salah would have a stinker, Mane would bail him out. Mane would do not have his best game. Firmino or Salah would bail him out, or vice versa. It would always if Salah and Mane were kind of choked up, Firmino would step up. And they would do this without having any kind of midfield help. It was just that front 3 just basically ran the entire attacking engine for I don't know 5 years. It's not that. So that's kind of where we are there. To wrap it up, PSG, what recruitment they've done. I talked about their attacking talent. Their back line with Mendes and Paco over both legs. William Paco is a player that I thought Liverpool were linked to. and they weren't able to get that signing across the line. Packer was very good on the ball. With Liverpool trying to press him, he was making good decisions. And then midfield doesn't start Zaire Emery. Maybe that could be someone that Liverpool actually look at. To be honest, I think he's been linked. They're stacked. That said, Liverpool were all over them, and Watkins and Rashford, maybe Asensio, Morgan Rogers. Unai Emery has some attacking depth to go after that back line. You as good as Paco and Mendes and whatnot are. There's no Marquinhos back there. Can Watkins run behind him? Uh, I really think it's a fun narrative draw. Unai Emery versus and Asensio versus PSG. I'm looking forward to that tie. To be honest, I wanted Liverpool to advance. Liverpool versus Aston Villa would have been fun for me, but probably not great for the neutral. This probably has some cachet for the neutral. There's a lot of fun storylines there. Also, I probably would have been a little bit more kind of in a better mood with the Newcastle game. I would have probably rooted for Newcastle had Liverpool been able to get through PSG, but I wasn't able to do that. Newcastle do go on to beat Liverpool and win the cup uh, 2-1. And again, it comes in a situation where Dan Burn gets a free header on a corner kick, and the thing that's kind of annoying here is a few minutes before this, Dan Burn has a similar header and a similar kind of corner kick. He just bullies Alexis McAllister on the ball, and you're thinking surely Liverpool have recognized that being a warning sign and to adjust, and it doesn't happen, and then it actually happens again. So it happens two times before this actually leads to a goal. It happens in like the 48th, the 45th, 44th minute, so right before halftime. But Liverpool have not been good. There is a moment where Diaz is able to get behind. I think maybe they even score, but he's offsides. There's a handball on Trippier as well that wasn't really looked at. Liverpool go into this without a shot on goal or even a shot all first half. Now they have a little bit of the ball, so they will do something with that, but not able to get forward at all. Really, hardly any touches in the box. Not able to get Salah involved. It's another situation where they're going long to Jota, and you get Dan Burn there, not able to get him the ball. I just thought it was crazy again not to start Darwin Núñez. If you're going to go long, Darwin Núñez at least is going to give you a chance to win some contested balls in the second half because in the second part of the field because Newcastle were doing a pretty good job to kind of frustrate Liverpool, frustrate Callum Kelleher on the ball, frustrate the center backs and whatnot. This is a game that Liverpool went in without Trent Alexander-Arnold, and again, not Salah not able to get involved. I think that kind of coincided a little bit. Joel Kwanzaa is not the same. And I think just Liverpool struggled with build up. Not the midfield I thought was stagnant, just not able to advance and not able to get it forward. And the second half wasn't much better. I was thinking surely we might get some kind of changes and not. We don't get that. Isak scores, but it's offsides. Kelleher spills that one, so that wasn't great. But for the most part, Kelleher he kept Liverpool in it in the second half with some other saves. But it doesn't really matter because Newcastle do get the second goal they wanted, and it's important. It comes from Isak as well, and it's just across from Livramento. Kanate dragged out wide, so you're moving him out, and all Across has to do is beat Van Dijk to beat Robinson, and Robinson's beaten on the header, and it's just kind of a putback ball, and Isak's able to gets the one golden chance and takes it. Where that Liverpool didn't have that outside of Salah. Jota had a decent reaction chance in the early second half and wasn't able to take it. He's actually able to bury his. And just that kind of told the whole story, really. Newcastle were deserving of that. Liverpool down 2 goals. Thought finally throws the kitchen sink on. He brings on Nunez. He brings on Curtis Jones. I wanted Elliott, so this was a little bit differently. Here, he takes off Kanate, moves Gravenberch to center back. I think Kanate was struggling for a knock, or maybe it was Ramadan. And Jones actually gets a couple good looks here. They actually, for the rest, finally Liverpool actually play the ball quickly. That was another thing too. Everything was moving so slow. They do a really good job to thread through some lines, make some good runs in the box. Cross comes in, finds Jones, and it's a pretty good save by Pope. But at the same time, Jones probably needs to bury this. So it's nice to at least finally force some kind of chaos, something for Nick Pope to do. But at the same time, he really needs to kind of needed that to go in.
And then there was another moment where Jones had a shot outside the box, just missed it. And then Elliott and Chiesa and Gakpo come on. So full out attack. You understand that. Liverpool get a turnover, and then Elliott is able to slip a through ball onto Chiesa that finishes it. And then Elliott and Chiesa are both lively the minute they came on. So I don't understand why Chiesa hasn't gotten more minutes. Garbage minutes. Just give him anything. He hasn't gotten anything in the league. It's been puzzling to me, puzzling to Liverpool fans. I looked online after that. Slot needs to trust him. Down the stretch, we need to see more. Both Elliott and Chiesa. Find a way to get him on the field. Um, but just Liverpool weren't good enough. Weren't good enough for 75% of the game. So it doesn't matter what you did the last 15 minutes. Uh, it, it, no Alexander Arnold mattered. Obviously, Kwanzaa is not the same kind of right back. Newcastle didn't have Hall. Newton didn't have Anthony Gordon. Didn't have Sven Botman. It's fair play. But so I'm not going to make an excuse, but just having no Alexander Arnold did definitely factor in. But that said, Newcastle deserved this. Um, but the only thing that I was thinking about is I was watching this and I was thinking, Man City showed the blueprint to beat this team, and Slot decided not to play with a number 9. Man City destroyed Newcastle by finding Holland to get Dan Burn out of the picture, and then slipping someone in behind with Marmoush. And Liverpool maybe had a chance to do that with Darwin Núñez and a Jota, playing together, or finding a way to slip Salah in behind with Núñez, drawing some attention, and instead they didn't do that. And the more I see it, I hate Jota being played through the middle. I really do. He's not he's not Firmino as far as holding the ball up. I think he gets bullied. I like Jota being able to get on the end of some crosses, but that's really it. He is frustrating when he's trying to play through the middle as the number 9. Núñez is frustrating too, but at least Núñez has that physical component, and you can use his runs. So you got Dan Burn back there. Take advantage of it. That was frustrating. But that said, this is more about Eddie Howe and Newcastle. It's their triumph. Eddie Howe gets his trophy that he's worked for, he's earned. Newcastle's first silverware since the Saudi takeover. Uh, they made the final a couple years ago versus Man United and lost that. So they've been building to this point. They went from last in the table when Eddie Howe took them over to finishing in the Champions League spot just over a year after that. They got to chase the Champions League football. We're grouped. But it was more kind of the schedule congestion, I think, really destroyed their smaller squad. They had an injury crisis because of that. They had some experience in the Champions League, so that was a benchmark. And now here's another benchmark, winning a trophy. So again, what a moment for Eddie Howe. Criminally underrated manager is what I have for a note here. He's transferred an utterly kind of left for dead club into what they are. Now they have spent some money, but so have Chelsea, so have Man United. The way they play, they're aggressive without the ball. But also, Eddie Howe kind of tweaked this a little bit. He turned Joe Linton, who was like a dud of a number 9, into a bruising kind of bully midfielder. He's they've transferred Newcastle into his vision, and they had to do this differently. They have the Saudi takeover where they're the richest club in the world, I think, as far as worth, and they haven't been able to go out and get Mbappe, get Sergio Aguero, or whatever Man City did. I think Man City brought Robinho. Robinho, yeah. Um, they haven't been able to get the splashy, Brazilian players to their club when they did get Bruno Guimaraes, I guess you can say. But Bruno Guimaraes wasn't really the most known player then, and they got him for 40 million. They've had to build this team slowly, and they've been very wise in what they did. They get Bruno Guimaraes, who, looking back, is going to be one of the best transitions any club has done in the last 10 years because of how much he's transformed the side and the money that they got him for. They bring in Trippier, which was a shrewd deal when they did at the time. Gave him some leadership, got some pretty good years out of him. His legs have maybe kind of left him a little bit as he's aged a little bit now. I think Livramento is probably the number 1 left back and or the number 1 right back, and I think Lewis Hall is the number 1 left back for them now. So Trippier is a little bit more kind of to the back burner a little bit here. But Trippier, when they got him in, was good. Dan Burn, that was another player they got from Brighton, just to come in and just kind of steady the ship a little bit to give them some security. And he's gone from being their left back in some cases to now being played in center back, and it's fitting. It's fitting that he gets the goal. He gets the basically the winning goal or the first goal. And he gets to celebrate that at Wembley. Uh, and then they get Isak. So it's just the reason why I'm saying it is like the Dan Burn is probably the one area they probably could look to improve on, but no reason to downplay him now. I think he just got his England call up as well, so he's having a pretty good month, pretty good week. But they also, they go out and get Tonali. That was maybe a little bit of a hit, because if he's expensive and wasn't able to, had the betting scandal. But he's starting to work out. Anthony Gordon has been good for them when he's been able to play. And maybe if you add Brian and Bremo to this, you can just see that front three is going to be really really scary if they can keep hold of Isak. But even if they lose Isak, if they recruit well with Ed Kite or someone else, you can see that working out as well for them. The only miss that they've had, in my opinion, is Harvey Barnes. He hasn't really worked out, and you lose Minta instead of that. So this has been a project that has taken some time to build, and there's been a lot of talks on clubs not doing it the right way. I think people look down at Newcastle because of their owners, because of the Saudi ownership. Uh, but I mean, maybe they just maybe they've been clever in having Eddie Howe be the face of it and not someone else. But it's been a team, it's been a story to root for, despite having the richest owners in world football. It's not they haven't done what Chelsea have done, where they just take out a checkbook, a blank check, and just try to buy $1 billion squad and don't who cares about PSR or whatever the rules they are, just kind of make it up as you go along. They haven't done that, and it's worth celebrating them. And, like, again, I would have wanted Liverpool to have beaten PSG, so I wouldn't have really cared about that, losing to PSG and then losing back to back. It just made me feel actually thankful for the international break, to be honest. But that said, it is pretty cool that Newcastle's fans were able to experience that. Uh, I've spoken about it before. I really enjoyed that movie Goal, when it came out. When the Santiago Munoz goes to Newcastle to from being an unknown to playing for that club. It's that kind of movie, and so Newcastle's been a little bit dear to my heart, at least from the movie. But then you learn about the club ownership, and it was hard under Mike Ashley, and it's pretty cool that they've at least been able to have a little bit of a revamp. Now, again, they get the owners, and people didn't really want to come into the club. More kind of state-owned, state-sanctioned owners, and I think a lot of clubs as well are looking at this as a club that used to be kind of a relegation fodder or used to be bottom tier is now not part of that anymore. They're now in this. They've made the competition a little stronger at the top. So again, I'm just kind of going over my thoughts there. Last things to kind of talk about here. Already mentioned kind of Slot being off the boil. The Trent Alexander-Arnold stuff. So it's come out that he is going to leave to Real Madrid, and the only thing I'm thinking about is does he start over Valverde? If Ancelotti gets a look at him, I don't really know if that's the case. Maybe they move Valverde. Maybe maybe they move Trent Alexander-Arnold actually into midfield. Maybe actually play him as Cruz. I don't know what the idea is. Yeah, obviously, he's probably going to be a success. So it is a bitter pill to swallow. There've been a number of times where he hasn't gotten England call-ups, and I think he's seen himself being at Liverpool as a part of that. Uh, I don't really know. It's come out that Liverpool did offer a hefty sum of wages, and it just wasn't enough. This has been in the cards for a little bit of a while now. It's not even Klopp leaving. It's been said that it's been said for a little bit longer. So you're not going to be able to replace what he has to offer on that right back side. Last podcast I talked about him being the second most important player in the side because he he makes things happen. He frustrates the hell out of you. Defensively, Doku gets by him 11 times. He doesn't always mark the back post, but that said, on the ball, he's a wizard. He's a difference maker. Whether or not to go long. If you're playing a low blocks or you're playing a mid block side, that switch on the top beats it. You're playing a low block side, you get him into the box, and he can get by you, and he can create. He's like a number 10 when he's on the ball. So you're not going to be able to just find a right back out there that does what he has to offer. So you're gonna have to change how the team operates. I don't know how that's gonna affect Salah. I think it's gonna affect him a lot, unfortunately. But we'll see who they're able to target. I don't think it should be to Connor Bradley. Have Connor Bradley maybe for a depth option, but yeah, I mean, speaking of Salah, the contract's still out with him, like with Van Dijk as well. So, uh, we'll see how this ends. Right now, Liverpool are in a rut, but the international break came maybe at a good time. So, this weekend is the FA Cup. Probably not going to talk about that. And then in the midweek, they're actually the EPL will return, and then we'll have something in the for the weekends. Maybe I'll do something after that. We'll have to see. But anyways, thank you for tuning in, and until then, you stay squatting and stop recording.